before we get started. Nice to see some people here watching this webinar, and I promise you it's going to be an interesting one. So we'll just give it about 30 more seconds before we get started.
Awesome. Hello, everybody.
Aika's excited. You'll be meeting officially, formally soon. And Yenni's here as well. So just a couple more minutes. I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm really pleased to see that we've got some people watching this webinar, and we're really happy to be bringing it to you today. My name is Melissa Giorgio, and I'm going to host these two wonderful minds in education today. So I'm happy to be the go-between and hopefully facilitate a really nice discussion about the future of developing future skills through play. So welcome everybody. Let's just take this opportunity to catch yourself in this moment and just ground yourself. You've probably had a busy day, or wherever you are in the world, you might be in the middle of a busy day, or you might even be in the car right now. So and listening along. So just take this moment to take a nice deep breath and think about what you're about to embark on, and that is the next hour of thinking about developing future skills through play. So also, I want to invite you to set yourself an intention for the next hour. You've committed to this, you're having a look at what's going on the screen. So what do you want to get out of it? And if you can't think of something that you want to get out of this webinar today, just keep your ears pricked for maybe a takeaway or two. Make it useful for you in some way or another. So just take a couple of seconds to think about that. Okay, so we'll just get started. And so again, welcome everybody. My name is Melissa Giorgio, and we're here with Eika and Jenni. And you're going to meet them in just a minute, and they're going to tell you all about their wonderful selves. But the title and the theme of this webinar today and this discussion is how to develop future skills through play. So it's an interesting topic because both of those words, actually, future skills and play, are really buzzwords in education at the moment. Everybody's talking about future skills because, as we now know, it's almost the way of teaching over the past 100 years is becoming almost obsolete because we can find information everywhere, and we need to equip our students now with the capacity to think on their feet and be active learners. And then play. There are lots of different definitions of play, and how that pans out in education is really interesting. But the most interesting thing for me as a host is that when you do something in a playful fashion, it opens you up to possibilities. So it's about, relaxation and not being so constricted and serious about things all the time. But we'll hear more about the definition of play when we speak to our two wonderful guests on this webinar. So I'm just going to dive right in and welcome our first participant, and that is Jenni. So Jenni, could you please tell us about your own journey through education here in Finland? You're a Finnish person, you were educated here, but tell us a little bit about that. But then I really want to know how you landed as the founder of Kide Science, because both of these companies that you two represent, Kide Science and Eduten, are wonderful tools to develop future skills through play. So Jenni, take it away and tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Melissa. And welcome everyone also from my side. It's great to be here today, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussion around play and playful learning. Well, Kide Science, the company I founded with two other fantastic ladies, Sari and Aino. It started from my own research. And if I tell slightly about myself, I'm a teacher of science and mathematics. And originally, I'm teacher at elementary school and high school level. And Kide Science operates with kindergarten aged children. So there is quite huge leap I made from high school students to 3-year-old children. But the reason why I got so fascinated about early years education and especially earlier science education was the moment when I got my own children. I got deep dive into the world and mind of young child. I realized I realized how endlessly curious they are. They ask questions all the time. And when I was observing my own children, I realized that very many of their questions were related to phenomena that we explain by using natural sciences. So at that moment, I started to think that how could we take this natural tendency that children have, ability to ask questions and wonder and explore things all the time, so that we can take this tendency and use it so that we can start developing scientific thinking skills. And at that moment, I decided that I will do my PhD studies around this topic. And then I conducted 5 years research on young children's science education in the context of science clubs. We wanted to do it in the context of science clubs because that was back in 2013. And then in Finnish kindergartens, there weren't that much science education, at least science education that had clear aims. So it was very hard to go to the kindergartens and observe children there. And I wanted to create a new model, the model that takes play as an essence of learning. So in science clubs, it was easy to test different kind of pedagogical approaches, collect the data, refine the model, and then test it again and collect the data. So we did this kind of testing and developing for 5 years. And then I finally got my PhD research done. And after that, we got so huge amount of feedback from the parents whose children has been going to our science clubs for many years, that they want this kind of activities more, that their children love these inquiries and that they can test and find out by themselves. Yes. So it was because of parents why we decided to establish a company that aims to spread this play-based model of early science education all over the world.
Yes, how wonderful. So you were listening to the call. After doing all of your research and all of those people participated, you listened to what people wanted and continued to provide that product. So could you talk a little bit about Kide Science itself as a product and what in practice that you're providing?
Yes, sure. Kide Science is a product for teachers mainly. So we aim to the situation that teachers use our online platform so that they get training how to do this kind of story-based, play-based science education with young children. Yes. And in our platform, we have the huge library of different lesson plans where we have embedded already the story, how the play is applied in that particular experiment with children. So it's the library source of knowledge for teachers. Yes. But then children, they are not using in our product the screen at all. So everything that children do, they do hands-on. They do in a group. They explore together. There is high level of social learning aspect and of course the play that they do together.
It sounds really fun. And actually, I've just remembered now that my son, who's now 8 years old, participated in one of those Kide Science clubs that went on for quite some time. And I remember him wearing his white lab coat and getting his little certificate at the end. It was absolutely gorgeous. So yes, wonderful. Love it. It is great, and we'll hear more about that a little bit later. Thank you, Jenny. And now to you, Eka. You've been very patiently waiting there to tell your very interesting story and how you became involved in Edu10, which is another great tool for teachers to use in the classroom or in tutoring clubs and things like that. But tell us a little bit about your background.
I was actually listening very carefully Jenny's story because we have a lot of common traits in how we ended up where we are right now. So yeah, my story started actually when I applied to university, and I ended up in IT uh, department at University of Turku. I've always loved IT. I went to IT specialized high school and all of that sort of thing. We even founded a IT company with a couple of friends, but I didn't find my passion there. I just didn't feel it. So I was actually looking for a new direction, and I ended up in teacher training, teacher education, and that was the best decision ever. I love it. I love teaching. I love kind of figuring out how children learn, what drives them. Oh, it's super interesting.
Mm.
And from there, I actually realized that I can connect these two interests of mine. So we can do a lot of good with learning technology, which led me back to the IT department. And I finished both of these masters from IT and from education. And like Jenny, I also started my PhD. And basically, what you see in Edugen is the outcome of my PhD research. Of course, there's a lot of other people involved as well, but all that evolves around that research. How we can improve math learning through technology.
And we got,
So
yeah,
here we are now.
yeah, and I just want to interrupt you right there because I've just remembered also that both of your companies are driven by this fantastic research. So that's a really exciting part of both of your learning tools because there's science behind it. So, these days everybody wants to see the science and know about it. Like, it's good to use different tools and kids are having fun and playing. Wonderful, great. But then has there been sufficient research behind it? So both of you are, at the front line there researching and have had researched that. So yes, thank you. But sorry, Eka, please continue.
No, that was my story, how I ended up basically working where I am now as a head of pedagogy at Edugen. So good for me. It ended up being a career. So there is a company, co-founder in that company, and I really can now use those interests of mine and do that every day and try to help teachers and students all around the world to learn and teach better. I
And
love it.
that's you. Could you tell us a little bit about the product of Edu10, please, for people who have never heard about it?
Yes, of course, definitely. So, like Kira, it's actually aimed for schools or teachers. Kind of, they are driving the product, but in essence, you can consider Eduten platform like an exercise book. It's meant for practicing math and your math skills, but it's just a lot better. It's interactive. It gives you feedback. For teachers, it's awesome. Everything is automatically assessed, so you don't need to mark everything. So you can consider that one student does a pile of worksheets every year, and you don't have to mark any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
have all the information there, though. You will have all the analytics. You can see which skills the students are excelling in, which skills are difficult, uh, how much work they're completing in certain time, and so on and so on. So you will get a lot of information that will help you to teach even better, to focus your time even better. And then again, for children, for the students, uh, they will be in charge of their own learning process. They are active participants. They are making decisions on their learning, and so on and so on.
Sounds really good. And I think what both companies have in common, even though one is digital and one isn't, that they're play based, they're helping teachers and children, are active participants in their learning journey. You could say maybe about the two products. So, that's really interesting. Jenny, I'm going to go back to you now and ask you a question related to play, because that's what we're here to talk about. And, Finland is sort of known for its play-based pedagogy and its curriculum. But can you tell us that as a student in Finland, did you experience play? And also, how did the idea of play shape your own ideas about the future of education, and how did you want play to evolve in your own company? So 3 big questions, really. Sorry, I should have asked them one by one, but I get too excited. So, yeah, what did you experience being educated here in Finland play-wise? And, how have you woven it into your company, and how did it affect Kide Science?
I've been reflecting a lot of back to my own kindergarten times and my own preschool times, and I have been trying to figure out what have I been learning and how I have been learning. And all I can come up with is that I remember that I have only been playing. That's the only memory I have from kindergarten and preschool, that I've been playing. And also when I asked my children, when they were in kindergarten and in preschool, what have you been doing throughout the day? What did you do? And they answer me, well, we've been playing. So I think that is the best thing in Finnish education, so that children don't even realize how much, in fact, they are learning throughout the kindergarten days, throughout the preschool days. And what they remember from that, what they have been doing is, I've been playing. Yeah. And they train all essential skills related to everyday skills, literacy skills, math skills, science skills, but still they feel that they have been enjoying themselves. So that is exactly the thing I want children to experience in Kide Science. Yes. So in Kide Science, we have very serious aims that we are targeting with our lesson plans, for example. There are essential science process skills that are base for thinking skills. So we want children to practice those. We want children to engage in inquiry process so that they learn about scientific process, how knowledge is produced. But at the same time, all that they think is that they have been exploring, they have been in a story world, and they have been playing with other children. So no stress, no drilling, just the feeling of playing and fulfilling their natural need to find out.
And so what does that look like in practice in Kide Science, if a student was in a Kide Science group or a child was in a Kide Science group?
So in Kide Science, we define or we use one sort of play. Play is huge concept. Yes. That you will soon hear about Eikka's ideas what play is. But we take only a tiny part of that huge concept of play. And we utilize very Vygotskian perspective on play. So in our play, imagination plays a central role.
Yep.
And we use this kind of dramatic play. And it takes a lot from the theory of so-called, it's like story-based pedagogy, where children play roles and teacher orchestrates that play by using a story.
Okay.
So we use this kind of play world approach in Kide Science. And in practice, this means that we trigger the playful situation so that children will put on their scientist accessories. And those can be white lab coats and goggles, but those can be anything else that just children relate that this tells me that I'm now in the role of a scientist. It might be a scientist hat, for example. So it doesn't have to always be that white lab coat. And that helps children to enter the mental state where they think that now I'm in the role of a little scientist. Then a teacher tells a story that comes always from our scene of our stories, Supraland. And in that story is always some kind of problem. problem that children need to solve out by doing hands-on experiments. So we scaffold the inquiry process so that we use the story to set the aim for the inquiry. And when children start working towards the problem, those are always open-ended, meaning that we don't have any specific answer in our minds that children should be able to dig out. So the most important is the process, where they practice science process skills, observing, measuring, classifying, etc. And depending on children's level, they can take a bit different viewpoints on that problem. And every child is able to produce some new knowledge regarding that phenomena that concerns the problem. So then we are able to produce the feeling of success for every child, so that we can support their feeling that I'm good, I'm capable, I can do this. But it doesn't matter if some child is in the level that they just describe their observations, and some other child might be in a level that they use, for example, measurements to make their observations more accurate, or they might be even able to suggest some kind of explanations already for their observations. But still, there are results for all children, and those results are like celebrated together so that everyone proceeds in their own path.
And it really brings to mind this concept that I discovered as a student here in Finland when I did my master's, and that is that there's no dead ends in Finnish education. And it sounds like there's no dead ends, in kiddo science, because there's always a path to go and there's always room to move up and down a scale. So, and I love this idea of stepping into a lab coat or a hat or whatever it is physically to kind of get you in the mindset of that learning that you're about to participate in. So that's so clever. And I think that if you're a teacher watching or a school leader, that might be something that you could play with in your own classroom with any subject, really, to sort of, introduce a topic via story or dressing up and things like that. Oh, that sounds really good. Okay. So, Eka, hello, over to you. How do you feel about playful education? Now, I know that Edu10 does have that element of gamification, so that type of play. And like Kiddo Science, Edu10 also has this sort of no dead ends approach. There's always room to fix your mistakes. And in some ways, you encourage making mistakes so that you can then climb your way back into the correct answer or find different strategies to get to the answer. So how do you feel about playful education, and why do you think that play is a vital component of the future of education?
Yeah, so play is the most natural way for children to learn. Like every children, every age, they learn from playing. They mimic what adults do, but it's all a play for them. So why wouldn't we leverage that? Like the natural interest, to natural will to learn, it's there. We just need to foster it. Kind of, if we don't step in the way of children playing and learning and being interested in, being excited about learning new stuff, then they will learn. But often we as adults, we actually stop them from doing that, interrupt them, and try to give them the correct way. No, this is how you should learn. This is serious learning. You should do it in this way. So I feel that we should let children play, because that's the natural way of learning. But also, play is a very crucial part of developing imagination. And creativity is often mentioned as one of the future skills of any citizen. And imagination is something that we really need in order to be creative. You can't be a creative mind if you don't have any imagination. And this is actually something that worries me a little bit, because we have so many ways of entertaining ourselves in a very passive way. Open up YouTube, Netflix, play I don't know, some follow YouTubers, TikTokers, whatever. All passive consuming. You don't need to come up anything yourself, and you will be entertained 24/7.
Yes.
Play, on the other hand, that develops your imagination. You set up the role you are in. You put in the scientist hat or a coat. You step in the role and you actually create the story yourself. So that's what I'm actually looking for in this playful learning and what I see as the strength of it. We are not force feeding a certain way of thinking, but we are actually allowing children to find their own ways to enrich their thinking and try to get around obstacles that are on the path. But I also feel that for this reason, this is difficult for the educators. Because if you take a very traditional role of teacher standing in front of the class and basically lecturing, you can plan that word by word beforehand, and it's all that. You don't need to uh, kind of change anything in the moment. But if we do this in a playful way, there will always be surprises. And you actually need to know your topic much better when you are in a situation like that. So actually, teachers have to make themselves a bit vulnerable in those situations. They need to be confident on what they know. And they actually might need to admit that they don't know something, that we need to figure it out together. That might be the difficult part.
Yeah. And before, when you were saying that sometimes we interfere with children and sort of say, oh, do it like this, or this is the way it's supposed to go, and not sort of stepping back, it's probably because of our own education and the way that we know things to be. So we've got this kind of controlling attitude in a way. But what you're saying is also that teachers need to, and I can take some advice here because I was a former school teacher as well. So I know that how organized you have to be as a teacher, and there is that sense of control and not wanting to let go of that, because if you have to take a turn somewhere, well, then the whole lesson's going to go away, and then where will you be left? How can you tick the boxes that you need to as a teacher and have those marks written down somewhere and so on? So yeah, it's interesting. So that when we're talking about play in education, we're also talking about a sense of playfulness on the educator's behalf, and actually a sense of playfulness for parents to sort of just let go a little bit and understand that everybody is the professional. Your children are the professionals. The people teaching your children are professionals, and then just let them do things, the way they want to. Yeah, it's really interesting. So how have you made math playful for both teachers and students in the classroom, Eka?
Yeah. So what we do is actually for a bit older students, and I like to think like games are a continuity for the play. So when children get older, instead of playing in a classical sense like young children do, they have games and they kind of enter the game world, so to say. They have set there's a set of rules. In which you have to work and so on. So actually, we try to leverage this. So we try to create a playful environment through gamification. And kind of the idea behind that is that we give a certain level of autonomy for the students so they can actually make decisions. And the idea behind there is to make them active participants in the learning process. So instead of them being passive listeners in a class, we actually want them to take responsibility on some of the decisions, limited decisions, but anyway, we give them some responsibility, and that will actually allow them to be part of the learning process and own that. And that is actually something that they will need in the future as well. They will need constantly be learning new things, uh, They probably will end up situations where they are in the middle of something completely strange and new, and they need to craft the ideas quite fast. So these are also the skills we need to teach them. How do I learn new things? How do I master my own learning? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a really empowering way to approach education, of course, to just allow kids to choose their own path and also make mistakes and work out how to bounce back from them, I guess, because same with life.
That's actually very important. You mentioned growth mindset earlier on as well, but the idea is that making mistakes is completely okay. Actually, making a mistake might be the best learning possibility ever. So once you make a mistake, you learn from that. You probably won't make the same mistake again. So it's
Yes.
completely okay. It's fine. Just let's find a way around it.
Yes. For people with no idea about what growth mindset is, Eka, do you want to speak a little bit more to that? About the whole philosophy of that it's just not just about mistakes, but what it is about the brain that we now know.
Yeah.
Not about trying
Oh,
to
yeah. So to
put in
keep
a
things to keep things very short, it's a mindset. So it's actually an open mindset that you are able to do anything. You are able to learn anything if you are just setting your mind into that. Uh,
yes.
the opposite side of growth mindset is fixed mindset, and that means that okay, I've learned the things I will learn. I will not learn anything new. I'm good at these things. I
Mm.
will never be good at anything else. So
Yep.
just to keep it simple.
Yep. No, that's very good. Yes, and exactly. And both of your products, Edu10 and Kiddo Science, really facilitate and make room for building a growth mindset. It's about trying things and realizing that we can do hard things as well, because actually science and maths, well, traditionally seem like the really hard subjects, the very masculine subjects, the only right or wrong subjects. So it feels like both of you are talking about these subjects as more fluid and flexible in a way with what you're doing.
In a
Yes.
way, and still it's still in a structured way, like Jenny mentioned, the lesson plans, how editing is structured in the lessons. It's still quite close what the teachers are doing now in the classes. It's not an open world, it's not limitless, it
Yep.
has boundaries, but then again it has a lot of possibilities. So everybody there, don't be afraid of being just an open world. No, it is structured in a certain way, but
Mm.
it allows students and children to be open-minded and to explore things.
Yeah.
Yes. And for example, in our idea, the teacher takes more like role of a facilitator. So not traditional teaching anymore, but you have to be able to listen children very carefully so that you really listen what they are saying and try to make them verbalize their thinking or express it in some other ways. It's not always just verbal expressions where children are communicating what they think, so that you can find those moments where you can push their thinking a bit further and get children to figure out something by themselves, so that teacher is slightly pushing all the time at thinking, but child gets that huge aha moment that
Yeah.
I got it myself. So
Yes.
that's the essence of everything.
This,
Yes.
I really have to interrupt here because I'm getting really excited. That this kind of teacher being a facilitator, this also means that the education is a lot more personal. The teacher is not only the TV in front of the class broadcasting the same thing for everybody, but this forces teachers to be more personal for the students.
It's
Mm.
all about interaction, really.
It is.
Person to person interaction.
Yeah. Relationships. And that's what I've always said as well, that education is about relationships. Because if there's no relationship, it's a very hard fight. It's a hard walk to build.
Mhm.
Okay, Yenny, I wonder, we're just going to put the spotlight back on you now. Just speaking of the play aspect, and that teachers should be players as well, almost. So it's really nice, but also just flipping that idea of teachers listening really carefully and being that guide on the side rather than the chalk and talk at the front of the room. But I just want to ask you, knowing now that play is essential for children's development, and we do know that the science does prove it, how does do you think play fosters learning?
Well, in very many ways, but what I think is the most important thing when we look at play from the viewpoint of science education is that through play, children are able to participate in the culture of science. So we have to think about science so that it's not only about scientific information and memorizing that, but it's also about to learn what is scientific process, how we are able to produce knowledge, and more important, what we do with that knowledge, how we apply it into different situations. And I think that sometimes early science education is approached so that we take children and we try to stuck them into the world of science. But we do it other way around. We take science and make science adapt itself into the world of children. So through play, we are able to give children possibilities to test what does it feel like to produce knowledge? What does it feel like to be the one who solves problems and finds answers? And we know from the research that when children are doing this kind of dramatic play, when they are, for example, playing firefighters, they start acting as they think firefighters act. And in children's minds, they are not playing firefighters. They are firefighters. And that's also something we want children to do when they take the role of a little scientist. They don't act scientists, but they start acting as they know scientists act. Of course, we have to help children to figure out what scientists do. For example, they ask questions, they do observations, they critically evaluate knowledge. They think, can this be true? And they take different kind of viewpoints, for example. But by playful situations, we give children possibilities to engage in the cultural process of science that traditionally has been seen as something that young children is not capable of doing. But of course they are in their own level, but at the same time they are building this very important set of skills that will eventually be needed if they, for example, enter to the career of scientist. But that's not something we aim that every child should be a scientist. But we want children to be able to utilize these skills in their daily lives when they grow up, so that they can back up their daily decisions, for example, with scientific knowledge. They understand consequences. Yeah.
So basically, you're teaching them critical thinking, which is crucial future skill for anyone.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Awesome.
Oh, very good. I forgot to say at the beginning of this webinar that whoever's watching, if you've got any pressing questions, don't feel embarrassed about typing them in the comments down below, because you've got two very fine minds in education, Dr. Aker and Dr. Yenny. So, this is priceless. So please, if you have any questions for them, do jot them down in the comment box at the side of this webinar, and we'll hopefully get to a couple before we run out of time. But we haven't had any questions yet, but some really wonderful quotes and things like, it's similar to what Einstein says, the only thing that prevents me from learning is education. Sadly, yes, but great. I'm glad we've brought that up, and I tried to remember that a lot when I was a teacher. Yes.
I have to say, I had a teacher at the university who told us that every children will learn to read unless you are stopping them. So basically the same quote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do. We have to get out of our own way as educators almost. And then two other comments, one from Salbia. During our online cases, we used to tell kids that it's okay to make mistakes and that they do learn through trial and error. Yes, wonderful. Really good to hear that people are embracing growth mindset. And Tamina has said that play is essential because we see kids these days are learning more from video and online games. Yes, it's true. So it's about selecting in the digital world the right digital tools, I guess, and Edu10 is one of those. And here, we might as well just go to a question because we've had one from Samira, actually. Thanks. Nice
It's
to
a
see
good
you.
question.
Yes. When children, through play, choose their own learning path, how do you ensure that the learning is taking place? What kind of documentation do you use? Who would like to take that question, or who's brave enough? I'll read it again. When children through play choose their own learning path, how do you ensure that learning is taking place? What kind of documentation do you use?
I can answer to that from the viewpoint of
Wonderful.
early education.
Yes.
So in early education, most important assessment strategies come from formative assessment.
Right.
So, and in
Could you
Finland,
tell us what formative assessment is for people who aren't familiar with that term?
so formative assessment, it's all about observing children, listening to children, collecting their artifacts they have been producing, for example, throughout some learning tasks. Different kind of portfolios, for example, are very used formative assessment method. So no testing, no measuring children's academic skills, but more like, as I said, observing what is happening around you, listening to children. And in Finland, for example, what we do in our early education, we do not assess children's academic development. So all the things we assess is the learning environment. What kind of possibilities for learning we have been provided for children. So we assess, for example, what kind of pedagogical approaches teachers have been using, what kind of tools they have been provided for children to learn, what kind of learning tasks. And these, on the other hand, we see what kind of effect that has to children's behavior, children's interaction, what kind of things they produce, for example. And in Kide Science, we have quite good tools for teachers that they can use when they assess this kind of approach to learning. So there are different suggestions how you, for example, collect with children their own scientist treasure box. That, on the other hand, is children's portfolio, where they collect different kind of evidence of what they have been doing and how they have been proceeding in their learning. And children can also come back to their scientist treasure box, and they can bring back to their minds, when I was doing this artifact, we were in fact practicing, for example, observations, and we learned that surface tension can be break down with dish washing liquid.
Yes, and that just answered Saima's question, are the lesson plans available on the website? So Kiddo Science does have some stuff available for teachers. Yenny, could you give us a little bit more information about that, about your website?
Yes, sure. So throughout our website, you can find our platform to teachers. And in our platform, there is at the moment, if I remember correctly, there is altogether 150 experiments for children. And those experiments are framed with, is it already 12? Quite many. I don't even remember anymore how many story themes we have, but those experiments are framed with stories, so that there is always one story theme, and then there are 10 lesson plans included into one story theme. So there is huge library for teachers to start right away doing science education with children in kindergartens. And of course, this is something that is quite new to many teachers, so they probably don't yet know what is this pedagogical approach where we take stories and play. So we also have teacher training there, but the teacher training follows also the same philosophy that we use with children. So teachers will learn by doing. No heavy texts, no long lessons, but there are short videos that give you the most essential information, and then you go and practice with children so that you can start right away doing experiment with the kids, but still making your professional growth happening at the same time.
Well, that sounds really good. And for anybody who's wondering about both of the companies here, Kid Science and Edu10, there will be links below, or there are already links below this chat, as well as if you signed up, you'll get an email afterwards that have details about that. So fantastic. Okay, not a question, but another great statement from Vinayak. If you hear, you forget. If you read, you remember. But if you do, you understand. And both of you are talking about learning through doing. So yes, wonderful. Okay, question from Zainab. Can we use time sample or other kind of observation method to assess their overall learning and development?
Well, maybe I can take it from here, kind of link to the previous answer of Yendi. When we talk about young children, kind of kindergarten age or preschool age, even in preschool age in Finland, we're, like Yendi said, we are not assessing their academic skills. The skills we are assessing are more holistic. They're actually we are actually assessing what is your readiness to learn academic skills, kind of in that way, or how you interact with other students and so on. So basically, there's no need to have this kind of time sample to observe, to have this very strict observation on the students, but we actually take more holistic approach to that. You could say it's the gut feeling of the teacher, but that's basically what it is. You keep interacting with the students many hours a day, you will learn your students and you will know their skills, their strengths, and their weaknesses.
And this is just an interesting point to make about parents and school leaders needing to trust their teachers and their educators more, because actually they really do have a very deep and personal insight into what's going on in their classroom. Actually, only they do. So, and too often parents and school leaders try to involve themselves in probably not so positive ways. So, yeah, teachers' gut instinct is alive and very good.
And
Yes.
I would say that even having something like this time lapse observations is actually creating a wall between the teacher and the student interaction. It's actually doing more harm than good. So you are actually spending more time measuring the children than interacting with them. You will learn more when you don't have that measuring tool hindering your work.
And that's the great thing about Edu10, because what's happening is this continuous assessment, isn't it? So the teacher actually has more time with students.
Yeah. So then if we go to older students and think about the assessment, like I said, there's some level of autonomy. All learning analytics will keep tabs on the students. It is constantly following what exercises they're completing, what skills they're practicing on, and the teacher will get a breakdown of the skills, of the kind of time consumption and all of that. So it's there. It's automatically, but you just need to check out who needs your support, who needs your help, and then interact.
Well, I've opened up a can of worms here because the questions are coming in thick and fast. I've got a question for both of you as teachers, maybe not so directly involved with your companies, your wonderful products, but a question from Solbia is, do you have designated areas where children play and work or learn through hands-on, how does it work in practice in the classroom for both of you? Like, any ideas about how to just integrate more play into everyday teaching? You know, do
Well,
we have a little frame around the play area and then the rest is for the really hard stuff? Or what are we doing?
well,
Go ahead,
or,
Jenny.
or
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Somebody speak.
from the viewpoint of Finnish kindergarten, so I'm not talking about school now, but kindergarten.
Yes.
Usually there is spaces where different kind of activities happened. So no one space for example, learning math or learning science. And we encourage teachers, for example, in science education, to do it there where those phenomena happened. So if we are going to study buoyancy, for example, let's find out that some natural water somewhere nearby and go there and observe things that are at the bottom of the little pond, for example, or other things that float. And then you can go inside, for example, in the play area, and you can start experimenting which of children's toys float and which of them sink. And then you practice, for example, classification skills when you classify objects that sink and objects that float.
Yes.
So in Finland, we basically learn in daily activities also. So we learn when we are dining, we learn when we are putting clothes on.
Yes.
We might be learning, for example, math when we put clothes on to go outdoors. So,
Yes.
so the answer is usually answer is no, that there are or areas that you do only for some activities. It might be different in, for example, schools where you don't have maybe this much space to use, but that is the case in kindergartens usually.
Yeah, but teachers are very resourceful and really creative. So what I remember from my school days, but also from my teacher training days, is that classrooms are actually really flexible. You can move the tables. You can, if you don't have enough space in your classroom, you can go to the sports hall, you can go outside, you will find the space. But no, there is no designated space for that. The more modern schools, like the really new schools in Finland, they have these special rooms that are actually even more flexible by design, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. So traditional normal school, 99% of the buildings in Finland are not that flexible, and still we manage to do all that.
Yes, in fact, I remember that I have been putting sheets on the tables in school, and we have been crawling under the tables to feel that we are in the cave. That was part of learning.
Yeah. Teachers are the most, creative and resourceful people. It still surprises me when you say those little things. Okay, we've got some great questions here. I've got two questions that are similar about parents. One person from Dubai is talking about, I'm sorry, I've lost I can remember it in my mind. I'm sorry, I'm not saying your name, but was talking about how they really encourage play, but the problem is getting parents on board. That's one of the big roadblocks to play in education. And then sort of related to that is, do you encourage, from Herminio, do you encourage parents to continue learning through play at home? So who would like to talk about that? Getting to parents, I'd like to even add maybe that there is a lot of science that shows the possibilities of education via play or play through education. So, send them some links to some scientific papers, and that should quieten them down for a couple of hours while they read them. But do you encourage parents to continue learning through play at home?
Well, let's take the first question about parents' doubts. parents are expecting children to learn academic skills in school, but when they're very young, the academic skills are very different than what the parents actually remember from the school. So it's very natural for them to think that anything else than just learning to read, learning to count, learning to solve math problems is learning. No, no. As an example, we in Finland we start school when we are 7 years old, and nearly everybody do not read when we go to school. So we are actually quite old before we start to learn to read. But still, our PISA results are one of the best. Our learning skills are one of the best in the world, and so on. So actually, I'm arguing here that we are waiting children to be in appropriate age to learn those skills. You can't hurry that those skills and learning those skills. They won't stick as well, and they will cause more stress to learn those things. Yeah, do you agree?
I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah.
I'm nodding here.
And as a parent who's just watched her son go through his first year of school, I was so worried as a teacher because I thought, my God, he can just write his name. It's only 4 letters, and he can write his name at 7 years old. What am I going to do with this child? 3 months later, he's reading. He's reading chapter books now. It was so easy because he was ready. There was no push. There was no uphill struggle. It just happened so naturally. So yeah, it's amazing. Okay, we've got time for maybe 3 more questions. So let's try to, I really would like to get to them all because they're so fantastic.
One question highlighted. Can I please?
Go
Yes,
ahead, please.
yeah, there was a question about which one is better, free play or guided play. I think this is really important, and this is in the essence of Finnish early education. So, Jenny, I think this is your area. Could you please go ahead?
Well, first of all, I said earlier that play is a huge concept, and there is everything between completely free play and very structured guided play. And between those, there are plenty of different types of play. And I think for the development of a child, all kinds of play is very, very important. And in free play, children usually make happen things that they would love to do in real life, but they are maybe not able to do it, at least at that moment. So they make it happen through play, meaning that children, for example, might desire to ride a horse, and naturally children don't have horses there at hand to ride. So they take a stick and give the stick new meaning that this is a horse, and they can make their desire happen.
Materialize. Yeah.
Yes. So that is Vygotskian idea of where play starts. But there can also be very guided types of play. And for example, in Kidda Science, the play we use, it's not completely guided, but teacher orchestrates the play. And there are some aims that we are trying to approach, but still using that playful feeling in the learning process. So for not sure, I don't want to put free play and guided play to fight with each other. Those both benefit some developmental stages that children have. And they also benefit learning in very different ways. So from more structured way, we can help children learn, for example, science skills. But when they take these skills into their free play, then we can say that children really have adapted those skills as a part of their lives. So shortly about guided play and free play, maybe Eka, you want to add something?
Couldn't have said it better. So
Yeah. Okay.
I figure out that you will be the best person to answer this one.
I wonder if both of you could quickly close up by talking about, somebody asked a question which was really nice about the what Kidde and Eduten experiences in resolving pedagogic issues in Finland. So are you resolving any pedagogical issues here in Finland with this Finnish product? The products are both available globally and very easily for anybody to sign up for. But anything in Finland, could you speak to that for the next minute each?
All right, so let me get started really quickly. 56% of the schools in Finland are using Educ today. And like in my PhD, I did research to prove that we can improve the math skills through digital learning and we can give teachers more knowledge on the students' skills. So actually, what we can do, we can motivate children to learn math. They enjoy it more. We give them more practice. We help teachers to differentiate the students, to give tasks on their own level, but we also help them in early intervention. So we help teachers to find students who were struggling in math early on before those struggles really turn into difficulties. Okay, I think that was almost a minute.
Very good.
And
59 seconds for you, Jenny.
Yes, thanks. In Kids Science, I want to emphasize that we are not trying to duplicate Finnish education and try to spread Finnish education. We have plenty of similarities with Finnish education, how we see what learning is and what child is as a learner. But of course, we are solving very critical problems also in Finnish education. For example, in Finland, teachers are quite afraid of doing science experiments with children. We know that, and we try to take that fear away by offering them play-based model that it's familiar for teachers, it's familiar for children what play is, and try to make teachers take this subject that they are a bit afraid of doing and try to narrow that gap, help teachers to do it.
Yeah, wonderful. And finally, Farzana has said, I'm sorry, this is David. Should we say learning directed play? What a nice way of putting it. Learning directed play to the parents who are wondering and have read the scientific papers and are still not convinced and have heard that Finland is doing really well, even though we start school later here and so on and so forth. So learning directed play. Dr. Jenny and Dr. Eka, it has been so nice to have you here today to talk about your respective products and play and the future skill of play and learning. So Kid Science, you can learn all about that going to the link below this conversation, and you'll hear about it in the email after this chat. Edu10, the same. There's a link there. You can sign up for a free pilot. There's lots of things to explore on both people's websites. So go ahead and do that. I want to apologize to all of the people who asked such wonderful questions and we didn't have time to get to, but perhaps we'll do a part 2 sometime in the future. But I'd like to thank everybody for attending. It's really wonderful. Of all the things that you could be doing, you're here now, and I'd like to honour that. So thank you for being interested in your schools, your children's, and your own education. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Eka. And we'll see you again sometime soon.
Thank you.